In this video, we're focusing on the sine rule. So the sine rule works for non-right angled triangles. So that's important. It is what we use to find an unknown side or an unknown angle in a non-right angled triangle. Now, as you can see at the top, we have A over sine big A equals B over sine B equals C over sine C. Now, little lowercase letters represent sides, as you can see in the triangle below. Capital letters represent angles. Now, the lowercase letters are directly opposite the appropriate angle. So lowercase a is opposite capital A. Okay? So now that we know that, the main part of this rule that we actually only use is this front part here. A over sine A equals B over sine B. We don't really need that C part right now. And I'll explain that later, but mainly it's because we choose what we're labeling. Alright, so now that we know that, we're going to jump in and I'm going to show you how to use this formula for a problem. So here we have a triangle, we have an unknown on the side, and then we have a bunch of numbers in here. So the first thing we want to do is label the triangle. Now, you always label your unknown as A. So we're going to say that this is my A here, and like I said before, that's going to be capital. So I could label this B, this big B. Now the problem here is we don't have the capital A. Now this sometimes happens. Sometimes it's nice and neat and just you get it. In this case we didn't. So we need to find that capital A there. Now this is where we use the angle sum of a triangle. Now the angle sum of a triangle is 180. Alright, so we know that all the angles need to add up to 180. So I know that A is going to equal 180 minus 104 minus 23. So that gets me 53. Alright, so I know that this angle is now 53. Now I've got everything I need. I've got a capital B, I've got a lowercase b, I've got my capital A, and then I've got my lowercase a. So remember the formula was A over sine A equals B over sine B. Now we're going to substitute in our values. So A, we said, was the letter D. We have sine 53 equals 9.7 over sine 104. Now we need to make our unknown the subject. So what we're going to do here is we're going to times by sine 53. And we're going to times by sine 53 up here on the numerator. That cancels out and we're left with D equals 9.7 sine 53 over sine 104. Now you're going to put that in your calculator. Now remember, if you have brackets, make sure there's brackets around both. So that comes out as 7.98. We don't have any units, so we don't need to put it in here. You could just say units. Alright, so that's how you use the sine rule to find an unknown side. Alright, notice that the lowercase letters are on top. Now that's important. When we go to find the next problem here, when we're trying to find an unknown angle, it's actually going to change a little bit. Alright, so what we do when we're trying to find the unknown angle is the sign goes on top this time. Like that. Now we're going to label it our unknown again. We're going to label it A. So this must be little a, this angle must be B, and this must be B. Now because we flipped it and the sine A is on top now, we're all good to go. Let's do our substitutions. So we have sine alpha over 5.7 equals sine 43.25 over 4.5. We're going to multiply our 5.7 up. So we actually multiplied out the front here. So we end up with sine alpha equals 5.7 sine 43.25 all over 4.5. But remember, we don't want to find what sine alpha is. We would want just what alpha is. So we need to take the inverse of this, which means we need to take the inverse of all this over here. They cancel out. And we get alpha equals the inverse sine of 5.7 sine 43.25 all over 4.5. Put that in the calculator and you end up with 61 degrees, 22 minutes, and 32 seconds. Now, before we end the video, I just want to cover something here we call the ambiguous case. So there is a slight problem with using the sine rule. Now, the sine rule, when you're using it to find an angle, it has two possible solutions. It could be what comes out on the calculator, which is the acute angle, or you could find what's the obtuse angle version of that, which is just 180 minus the acute angle. So be very careful when you're reading problems. Sometimes they'll say, find the obtuse angle that belongs here, and then you would have to go 180 minus whatever the angle is that you found. Just important to note that.